Shelley Katae of Te Raroa and Ngāti has held general management and operations roles in businesses across New Zealand, Australia and Fiji. Shelley joined Tāmaki Regeneration Company in 2013 as Chief Financial Officer and was appointed General Manager, Strategy and Performance in 2015. Leading the strategic direction and business planning functions across the organisation, this has included a key focus on establishing the social and economic delivery program.
Hi Shelley, thank you so much for coming this morning. Really good to see you again. I thought it would be really interesting before we kick off just to hear a little bit about Tāmaki Regeneration Company, because I think some people would like to understand what it means in terms of its community aspirations and what you're doing for Tāmaki.
Yeah, no problem. So Tāmaki Regeneration is essentially leading one of New Zealand's largest urban regeneration projects. We're based in Tāmaki, which is 12 minutes from Auckland CBD, via train of course, and there's 20,000 people living within Tāmaki, mostly Māori and Pacific, and within the community we own 2,500 public homes, so we essentially look after 10,000 tenants to live well within those homes. So over the next 20 years we've got a really big focus, and that's to work with our community and with a lot of other partners to help support community wellbeing aspirations. And what that looks like practically on the ground is that we're replacing the old public housing stock. So they were built in the 1940s and 50s. We're replacing them with 10,000 brand new, warm, dry, healthy homes. We have something called the Tāmaki Commitment, which means anyone impacted by development gets to stay in the community, and they get to stay in either a public home, an affordable home, or a private home. And we also work with community to deliver home ownership programs, unashamedly targeted at community and Māori and Pacific whānau. We have a jobs and skills hub where we've put through 1,000 locals into quality jobs so far. We'll put thousands more into quality jobs in the future, and working on an education plan with our partners across local schools and MOE. So there's a lot to do.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Very multifaceted and a real community focus, which is exciting and important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess leading on from that, when you look at this pandemic that we are still living through, although very lucky here obviously, what were the challenges, I mean from a business perspective, but also from a community perspective for Tāmaki in the last 15, 18 months?
Yeah. It was quite interesting because for me the challenges really existed almost on three levels, and they were all almost hierarchical and built on top of each other. So the first kind of challenge I think we all faced into as leaders was how am I going to stand as a leader through this pandemic, and what am I going to stand for? And that was quite a big fundamental decision right at the start of the pandemic. And that was all about understanding, there is no roadmap for this pandemic. There is no business plan you can copy off or kind of follow. So it all came down to really what were my values as a leader, how are they going to guide my decision making, how was I going to turn up, what attitude was I going to bring when I was turning up every day, and what operating principles were going to guide our operational decisions on the ground. That just became really fast and constant. So that was probably the biggest challenge, the first big challenge. And then the next one was really how will we support our team, our staff, our employees through this, to be well within themselves and support them to ensure that their whānau was well, and then to do their job working from home. That was kind of the next big thing. And the third challenge really, which was the biggest and probably where we had the most learnings from, was how on earth are we going to support our Tāmaki community through a pandemic when a huge amount of our Tāmaki community without a pandemic are doing it really hard on a daily basis. So that was a huge challenge to contemplate right at the start.
And in terms of that one, what did you do? I mean, how did you put in action, a kind of roadmap in place, I guess?
Yeah, it was, we did something really different. And at the heart of it, I think what happened is we learnt how to relinquish power, how to devolve power, how to place decision making into the hands of our community organisations, into the hands of whānau under a high trust model. That was really what was at the heart of it. So, you know, I remember those days in, I think it was mid-March, wasn't it, 2020?
Yeah, end of March.
Yeah, end of March, heading into the first lockdown. No one really knew what was going on, and we started meeting online with our community stakeholders and leaders, and being really upfront to say, look, we haven't navigated this territory before. What do we do collectively? Yeah. And you know, I'm really proud of what we decided to do. We positioned ourselves to say, you guys know what's best on the ground in Tāmaki. You set the priorities, and we will come in behind those priorities and support wherever we can. So that was one of the key things that we did right at the start, and that really set the tone for how we, you know, led through, how we partnered with, you know, people through the whole global pandemic.
What were the biggest risks and I guess pain points for the community? Like what were you all most, obviously we're all concerned about the health implications, but as well as that, what were the kind of focus areas for you?
Yeah, the community was really clear in terms of, it only took one hui for community to understand what their priorities were. So the first one was shelter and housing. Yeah. And we of course were able to help out with that. So there were absolutely no whānau moved out or had to move during any of the lockdowns. Right, yeah. And then government took care of the private rentals. So everyone had stable, secure housing during the pandemic, and that's continued, which has been fantastic. Yeah. The second thing is was kai, was food. So a lot of our whānau just couldn't get access to food at the best of times. And then during a global pandemic, a lot of our whānau lost their jobs. We found that our kids suffered quite heavily because they were getting a lot of food from schools. And when the schools shut down and they went home, there was no food provision there. So we actually stood up a food delivery service in conjunction. We stood beside Taupō Marae, our community organisations. We brought in a private sector partner, the produce company, MSD helped to fund, as well as Pacifica Futures, and we had that stood up within 2 weeks, and we're delivering food packages into households.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was pretty.
It makes a difference. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, really made a difference, and we were delivering them. This is the finance part of me coming out. We were delivering them for $25 a parcel. They were market value $60. So we really, you know, discovered through trialling different ways a lot of efficiencies. So kai, housing. The next big thing for our community was support services into households. And our tenancy arm, you know, we're phoning 2,500 households a week to check in and make sure people were okay. They were often the social connect for some of our tenants who were socially isolated, and they worked on pulling services into the households. So Waipareta came in, you know, great whānau order partner, stood beside Taupō Marae, stood up additional whānau order services, and we connected that all up to provide good support pathways for our tenants. So they were 3 of the 4 priorities, and the 4th priority was around communications. Yeah. So a lot of our community just didn't connect with central television, central government communications. So we funded a local filming company who filmed a lot of our local leaders, and they took the messages from central government, packaged them up and sent them all through local communication channels. So that really made a difference in terms of altering behaviour of our local community on the ground.
Right. You make it sound like it was quite straightforward.
I do. I think I've blocked the you know, the amount of kind of weaving we did as a collective to find the pathway, but that was all really important too.
Yeah, and and leading on from that, do you think because of COVID, the way that Tāmaki Regeneration Company work has changed? Have there been any what have been the learnings from it?
It was huge for us actually. That devolution of power learning was huge. We can do that. It is better. We can actually drive better outcomes if we take our resources and our decision making and actually push that further towards our front line or into community. The other learning for us was, we can break down these systemic inequity barriers. You know, if we work collectively, we can do it. We can do it under COVID. So there's no reason why we can't do it as we exit this pandemic. So they were two big things for us.
And do you think going forward now there are different opportunities or bigger opportunities for TRC?
Yeah, I think so. What we decided to do, even though a lot of our team had a pretty full-on year, we decided at the end of last year to really not just take lessons learned and embed them in a small way through the organisation, but we actually did a full strategic reset.
Wow.
So we co-designed a strategy, a new 20-year strategy with our team, with our community partners, and now we're right in the middle of just embedding that into every way we work. So we didn't change what we're doing, but we fundamentally changed how we do things. You know, our Te Tiriti framework now sits right at the top as a priority. Driving equity outcomes, you know, through lessons learnt for the pandemic and other work that we're doing in parallel, and devolving power to community and standing beside community, building capability and capacity to be able to resource them to run the program going forward was a big fundamental change for us. Now that's not going to happen overnight, but but that is in plan. We've got projects on the go now, and that will roll out across the coming years as well.
Do you think it's helped your community become more engaged with your organisation as well? Like they've seen another side to how you operate?
Yeah, I think it has. I probably haven't even reflected on that. But yeah, I even think about you know, the hui that we had with Uro Pōtaka Marae yesterday. Definitely the relationships have strengthened through that journey. And I think from the basis of those strong relationships and the community seeing us devolve power and do things in a different way, I think we're just working a lot closer together, not just with our community but with our other delivery partners, Kāinga Ora, you know, Ministry of Social Development, etc. as well.
It's really good to hear actually, and I think, you know, thank you for coming and chatting to us, because, you know, in many respects the impact of COVID is at that grassroots level. You know, it's very easy to think about it in a much sort of bigger picture, but actually the fact that you came together and supported the community is so important, and it's so I really appreciate your time.
Very cool. Thank you. Kia ora.
You.